Argentina has given the world some of history's greatest cultural icons, from the artistry of Maradona and Messi, the passion of the tango, or the drama of Evita. And in the business of international TV, you can add this week's guest, Fernando Szew, to that illustrious list. Fernando built MarVista Entertainment from a family-run operation in LA to a global powerhouse for TV movies, and then expanded the company's family entertainment presence with the Power Rangers library. In 2021, Fox acquired the MarVista business, and Fernando now oversees a dynamic and diverse group of producers under the Fox Entertainment Studios banner. Fernando and I sat down one evening recently to talk about his career in TV, and there was something in the air that allowed us to capture so many fascinating stories about growing MarVista into the preeminent home for TV movies, being inspired by Jaime Saban, melding entrepreneurial spirit with the market presence of Fox, and the advice he would give his younger self if he had to do it all again. Enjoy. Hi, Fernando. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you doing?
Great. Happy to be here. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining me. I always like to start with a fun question to get the creative juices flowing. And for you, the question is this. You are given a chance to secure the film rights to the life story of either Diego Maradona or Lionel Messi. Which one would you choose?
I always like to take problems and find solutions. And this one's a real problem. I'm not going to choose. I'm going to do it about both of them. And I'm going to perhaps start, I'm not sure of the year, but there's a famous story and anecdote of Maradona when he's coaching Messi on the national team, giving him some tricks on the free kick, which Messi was already amazing at, but I guess through that he perfected it. So I think that's a great starting off point, and then flashback to how Diego got to that moment and Messi from there on after. But I guess your question is a leading one as to who's the greatest ever. And to me, and I've had the incredible fortune of being at and seeing Messi so many times, including when he raised Argentina's third World Cup recently, and I've seen him play so many times. I grew up watching Diego Maradona. Diego's life from a film perspective, clearly much more colorful. Some wonderful documentaries have been made, and he carries a special place in all of our hearts for the Argentines. But Messi's story is still not even done, and I continue to be in awe.
Very good. Well, your early life straddled Argentina and the US. Now, obviously, the US TV industry is much bigger. So I'm more interested in how much of Argentinian TV and film informed your cultural touch points.
Sure. I think, I moved to the US when I was young. My parents moved, my family moved. I was 10 at the time. So it certainly had an impression on me. And then I always maintain my roots with Argentina, had friends and family. My grandparents still lived there at the time. So it's a couple, like kind of twofold answer to this. One is that me maintaining my roots and always seeking to understand more as to the heritage and where I came from and all that. More than television, I would say I was always amazed at the level of great literary works coming out of Argentina, wonderful music, especially the music scene once Argentina went towards a democracy, which was around the time that I was growing up. So there's just a great artistic movement through the life of Argentina. I think that I found, like most Argentines, we're all very proud. We think we do things very well. I don't subscribe to that. I don't think we are necessarily the best at everything, but there are a few things that were really, that are shining lights for us. And I think artistry is one of them. On the television side in particular, what drew me is we have a family relationship through marriage to who was called the Tsar of television, Alejandro Ramay, who really built an empire through television in Argentina. So at a very young age, I was able to just go to the channel and see the lights and the shine and the glitz, and it attracted me for sure. And he, as a personality, attracted not just me, but a lot of people. He was the magnet, really. And so I think, those things are like early impressions that I've had. But then, really, 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 as we get into, I'm assuming we're going to get into my career, not just my childhood and where I'm from. It's that aspect of biculturalism. It's that aspect of having an open mind to the world. It's an early understanding, I think, different growing up in Argentina or in other countries than my peers at the time in the US, where the content was local for sure, but there was a lot of content coming from many different places. So just being in tune to different tastes, different cultures, and that's something that's kind of been a part of me.
You studied at the University of Pennsylvania and the prestigious Wharton School. Were you always destined to go into the entertainment business, or did you explore other options as well?
I was not destined to go into the entertainment business. I was always attracted, again, by creativity. And I would say that at that young age, I was pretty focused. Not only did I go to Wharton, University of Pennsylvania, I was fortunate to attend and be the first year of a program called then the International Studies and Business Program. Since it's gone renamed to be the Huntsman program, with a dual degree in international studies and also at the Wharton School through a Bachelor of Science there, where I concentrated in management and in marketing. And I'm saying all of these things because it was clear to me early on that I was going to do something internationally focused. It could have been diplomacy, it could have been journalism. Like, these are things that were going through my head. And then the business world really, really attracted me as well, especially on the marketing and management fronts, which is where I kind of focus my area of study, and where those things came easier to me than, say, accounting, for instance, though I've had to learn the hard way. As we'll get into that, I'm sure, later too. So I was really attracted with go-to-market strategies, consumer behavior, things like that. And when I got a chance, which I'm sure again we will talk about further, when I got a chance to start in the industry, and my first jolt was super internationally focused. There was it was love at first sight. I mean, I was like, this is it. It was destined. So I guess the answer is I didn't think I was destined, but clearly I was destined to do it. And I've also told the earlier part of the stories of, the family relationships to it. Through that is also how my dad got a work visa to come to the US. So maybe it was written somewhere. I didn't know it at the time. I refuse to say that it was just destiny, but, I've been lucky. So maybe.
And you mentioned your father, Joseph.
Yep.
How much of an influence was he on your career in general, and how you've approached things? Because he had a family entertainment distribution business called Whammo Entertainment.
Yeah, so I joined Whammo. What happened was, after college, I went down to Argentina, worked not in the industry. I chose to go there primarily because I wanted to solidify a relationship with my now wife of almost 25 years. But when we got married, I knew I wanted to come back to the US and I wanted to raise a family here. And my father at the time had started Whammo with a partner, and they had a separation, and his partner then fell ill. So I had the opportunity to be on the ground floor with my dad on another attempt of his to really build a company. And I think the combination of his smarts and administrative wit and my biculturalism that we talked about, and my salesmanship, and then the education that I had and thinking bigger, was really a winning formula for us. And we had a good time. Listen, I'm super blessed because it wasn't necessarily there's some story out there that says that it built it out of the garage. I didn't. He started out of the garage, really. By the time I got there, there was very small, but there were a few files. There were a few animated pieces of content to go sell. And there was already the beginning of something. And it was wonderful. Not without its hard moments. We can do a whole other podcast maybe for another venue on working with family and things of that nature. But what I learned from my dad and what I continue to learn because we still have a wonderful relationship are some business adages that he kind of grew into. And some of, he talked about the three P's, which was, and still is, patience, perseverance, and passion. And I think that that was the early days of what we kind of brought to work, which was just being passionate and blessed to do what we were doing, persevering through what entrepreneurship can look like. It was really, again, it wasn't a startup, but it was nothing of a company. It was just my dad, myself, and an assistant. And yeah, and the patience to look out for those wins when you can get them.
In 2003, you co-founded MarVista Entertainment as a distributor of third-party programming. What was your vision for the company, and what was the gap in the market that you'd identified with MarVista?
Right. So again, kind of going chronologically, 1999, I joined Whammo, my dad's company. I moved back from Argentina from my short stint there in September, late September. You can imagine because you know the world. October, you know where I'm at. First Mipcom, I'm in Cannes. I get hit by the bug. This is my life. But after a few years, I started to see that it was very hand to mouth and very hard to be just a middleman without access to capital and without content, really, and just kind of having to plead for what we could sell, and then selling was also not that easy. I think I've chased throughout my life the glory days. Always people talk about, oh, it used to be so much easier. It was never easy for me. It really wasn't. So I guess maybe at some point in time it was glorious and it was easier. It certainly wasn't in 1999, 2000, and we can go on through the years and we'll talk about that as well. But by the time we founded MarVista, and to answer the question, the first thing that happened is I had an incredible godsend in my life, which was a character and a guy by the name of George Port, who you might have met. I'm not so sure. George had done some business with my dad's former partner, came to LA in passing, coming back from the UK. We had a breakfast. He was at the more than the tail end of his career, almost in retirement. And as I heard one of your guests recently, just took a liking to mentoring people. Well, he found the mentee in me for sure. And he became like another father figure without being my dad. So different and better in some instances, I would say. And really just gave me a one-man sounding board to explore ideas. And he had knowledge of the marketplace. And we just built the most incredible relationship. And one of the treasures of my life, George left us during COVID, unfortunately. But it was incredible. So with George, what I had was this back and forth of my ambition saying I need more, and he egging me on to think about the business acumen that academically I had, but I was, I was nothing. I was a 24-year-old, 25-year-old, and just to start to put into practice. And at that moment in time, what I really was seeing is how do I build something from hand to mouth and kind of the hand to mouth company, as I called it, the middleman, to building something of substance. That's what I knew I wanted that. I knew there was that was part of my destiny always, was that for sure. I will say is to be a leader. It's just what I studied. It's just what I was even in the early age. Again, I'm not unique, but captain of the teams and all that kind of stuff through growing up. And it's just where I felt my energy would be put to good use. And George could see that as well and saw that in essence, Whammo was too small for my ambitions. But I had a passion for working with my dad, and I had a passion also for starting. Into my life then came Michael Jacobs, who at the time was SVP at a company called Porchlight, which we would always kind of lose It was like they were maybe 5 blocks down the street, and they had started with capital, and they were a much bigger company than we were, but we were all in the family entertainment business. They had actually carved a niche. So producers would usually like come to us and go to them and give content to them, or if they weren't happy there, they would come to us. So Michael and I hit up like an industry friendship in a sense, and Michael came to me with a plan that really started to serve what we needed, which was finding, to the point of your question, and I'm sorry I'm going long, of identifying how how do I take some of the relationships that I had built and some of the essence of a small distribution entity, take it upstream so I didn't have to be so dependent on other people's content? And how do we start to, without capital, produce? And what we saw was that in the TV movie marketplace, there was a like a small ecosystem of being able to pre-sell and produce with facilitated by tax credits, being able to retain rights, taking some risk, but very minimal risk, at least at the time. At least that's the way we did it and started small and started to at least own and control the content. And also went, which Michael really brought to us, with a more aggressive plan for acquiring content or representing other types of content. So, we started to build from there, and that's how MarVista was formed. It was my dad, myself, George, and Michael. It was the four of us. Michael and I really leading the charge. Again, the kudos to my dad for taking a back seat and saying, "This is your path. Go take it." He wasn't sure he loved it, but he believed in me. That's the truth, and he had to let go. And Michael over time became, a partner as well. And we had an amazing run and time of what lasted 7 years as kind of that unit. And then, we evolved as a company. We can talk about that further. But those early days were a lot of fun. And it was very much of a startup and very entrepreneurial. And there were moments where we could have just lost the company. I mean, there's so many moments where it's like, really? This thing, are we going to keep it going? But we all put that perseverance and passion to work, that's for sure.
And you mentioned your first Mipcom, and Mipcom's not too far away. What was that like, and how did you
Oh,
establish relationships with buyers just coming into it relatively fresh?
yeah, I mean, I walked we had a little booth in the basement that my dad already had booked, and it was shared and it was, if I remember correctly, it was definitely in the basement. I know exactly where it was. I think it was B6 or B9. I can't remember now what they used to call that thoroughfare of the basement. Mipcom was amazing. I mean, to answer your question, it was, and still kind of is to me, like going to the World Cup or going to the Super Bowl. It's just where the world comes together and everyone's on their A game and everyone is just trying to be the best they can be. And that's the way I found Mipcom to be. And it was hustling and bustling. And I was not shy. I wasn't too abrasive, but I was not shy about walking the floor and, meeting people when I didn't have meetings at the booth and just really picking up early on. I would read a lot of the trade magazines at the time and just kind of connect the dots, who's who. And yeah, that's how it worked. I mean, I think being bicultural, as we called it, not being afraid to talk to different people from different parts of the world, knowing a little bit about everyone's background and countries and the politics. It was maybe a unique perspective for people, for someone young who came from quote unquote the US, even though I wasn't, right? It was that mix. And it was phenomenal. And then, I don't have a lot of strengths, but one of the strengths I have is a good memory, especially when it comes to people. And I think that served me pretty well as well, because I could connect the dots and I could connect faces, and I would like just very kind of instantly be able to strike up conversations. The hard part was I didn't really have a lot of content. So, you know, and that was really challenging because and now we go past the first Mipcom and into the net piece and the second Mipcom and all that. It's like, how many times can you have the same conversation without offering somebody something that they actually want? Because again, they're there for their A game. They're either building their companies at the time. A lot of them were DVD distributors, building their DVD, independent DVD distributors. Or I was trying to go a little bit, quote unquote, upstream in my mind to broadcast and direct to broadcasters and not working through distributors that would buy, multiple rights. But again, I didn't have the offering that others would have to make their life easier, their job is easier in that, quick half-hour meeting, which really is a 10-minute meeting after you do all the small talk.
So a key move for the company was to expand into the production of movies, and that can be the graveyard of distributors because the inherent financial and creative risks in production are very clear. So how did you successfully navigate these waters, and what kind of different skills did that require?
Yeah. So again, the evolution of the company and my career was we were first represented animated films. Then we started to say, hey, we're selling them. We're bringing a lot of the financing to the table, even if it's after the fact, but we can now project and guarantee some numbers. They were not even close to put deals, but they were clienteles that we had. So we started to say, how do we start to maybe get involved earlier and produce those? And we did some co-productions with a fellow by the name of David Field out of Australia. His company was called Burbank Animation. That was under Whammo, and that's that was kind of my first foray into that, and being able to. I even pre-sold an animated Christmas movie to. I don't know why my memory's jotting now. You can tell to Anne Miles in the UK, just off of a magazine ad. We placed a magazine ad with wonderful key art on Kidscreen magazine. First time I spent like this was like me being risky. Funny against the will of my dad. He's like, what, you're gonna spend money on what? And I remember to this day she picked up the magazine and said, I want this, and paid at the time a boatload of money, like 3 or 4x what we were getting paid in the UK. And with that we helped to finance that film, and there was an animated film, very low budget at the time. So it was kind of the first thing of how can you start to influence through financing and through understanding the marketplace, and kind of quote unquote what's now been called, or what we used to call too, reverse engineering into producing based on the demand of the marketplace. But really, 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 when we got into production was in this partnership with Michael when we formed MarVista. And it's funny that you say graveyard, because I never thought about it as a graveyard, because that's thin. But I actually said something that I would say something that, and I still do it sometimes, which is probably also dim and grim and should not be said. But I sometimes felt like I was walking through a world of dinosaurs, because a lot of people, we circling back, when we got started doing some of these TV movies, the competitive set of producers would call them MOWs. And they dreamt of those days when, and it was right there when CBS and the networks were paying, and it was like huge. That was not a world for me. So to me, those folks, God bless them all, were kind of dinosaurs, because they were still looking to do things that the marketplace. It was clear to me they weren't airing them anymore, so they didn't exist. But so, we came in a little bit bold and brash, and got into understanding how to piece together projects with the use of being able to be nimble, with the use of technology by way of cameras. At the time, they were getting better and lighter and cheaper, so you could move around, and just being able to, produce for what the marketplace wanted at the time, which was not so much MOWs kind of TV movies, but really they were made for cable movies at the time. That's what they became. And that's what really catapulted MarVista into first doing one, then doing a few more, and then ultimately the MarVista, which we'll talk about, I hope.
And in 2010, just jumping forward a little bit, MarVista landed international distribution rights to over 700 episodes of the Power Rangers TV series. How important to the company was landing that deal, and what was it like working with the legendary Chaim Saban?
Legendary, 100% legendary. Another kind of weird godsend into my life. Chaim, I mean, there's so many things to say about that experience, but that really is what catapulted me and my persona from the basement, so to speak, of Mipcom into another world, because there I was waltzing in with truly a legend. The story of how Chaim selected us is, to this day, I don't really know how it really happened. I know the end, which is I was at a MIP TV, I think it was, and I got a phone call to say, when you're back in LA, Chaim wants to meet you. And that phone call came from Joel Andrick, who was handling content for him at the time. And I had met Joel Andrick. Was one of those conversations that I had struck up a conversation at a NATPE, really had nothing to sell. He was at Fox Family. I had some animated films. We talked. They never bought them. We kind of stayed in touch, would periodically have a lunch every now and then. Such a nice guy. So he calls me and he's like, Fernando, we see what you're up to. Chaim wants to meet you. And I came back and I remember that before that meeting, I moonlight. It was almost an all nighter of pulling together a whole deck of why me and why the Power Rangers could sell in today's environment and blah 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 blah. And I pulled that together, and then had a meeting. And then Chaim said, "Great, saw it, wonderful. I want to see where you work." And it is truly legendary. We were at the time on Venice Boulevard in a rinky-dink office, which I was super proud of at the time. But it was small, next to a liquor store, and I mean, it was, anyway, it was. And Chaim just wanted to see where we worked, to see if we were real, and see kind of what we were made of. And that's the type of character and legend that he is. He wanted to make sure that we were going to put our blood, sweat, and tears into, the Power Rangers and doing it. And not only did we do that, it was phenomenal. Again, I was on the ground floor of rebuilding this for Chaim, and he was so passionate. He had put together, obviously, a group of people as well. And for me, it was my time to kind of flex in the business world and to be entrepreneurial, but have that muscle now behind me to flex, that they allowed, because of the relationships that they had, and because of who he was, and in particular because of the amount of content and what the content was. I mean, it was bringing the Power Rangers back to Mipcom, which again, I wasn't there when they first launched, but legend has it, it was pretty amazing. When we relaunched it, it was amazing in my eyes, and it was incredible. It was really great, and I built a wonderful relationship with Chaim and his group over there, and we cleared the world, and we just did a really good job. And I kind of comp it, going back to soccer and football, our early conversation. And this is not maybe the right comp, but I just always like to talk about sports as well, because it is a passion of mine. It's like Argentina now winning the World Cup and the young players winning it for Messi. That was me. I was like Enzo and Julian Alvarez and Macau. Just, I would do anything to show up for that guy. And but it was so much fun.
Excellent. So we're now getting into the next era of TV, which saw the launch of multiple non-linear services, SVOD services like Netflix and Amazon Prime Video, and an array of broadcaster-based digital services. And something you touched on earlier, which was the previous era of TV had looked at movies as being movies of the week, MOWs,
Yeah.
and then TV was evolving with cable and new forms of distribution. And now we have another different way of distributing TV and consuming TV. As a producer and distributor of TV movies, how did this evolution in the nature of TV impact the movies that you made, the way you sold them, how you ran this business that was now very successful and had various parts, various moving parts?
Yeah, I mean, a few things. Again, in the evolution of MarVista and the career, we landed the Power Rangers. We talked about that, and at around the same time, Michael and I and the partnership started to sever in a very friendly way. We were still very good friends. Michael and I talk all the time, but wanted different things out of life and out of business. And I was able to raise some capital, primarily for his share of what he had built, and also because I understood at the time, not that this world was coming yet, I wasn't that prescient around it, but I understood that the key to unlocking just the production that we had, and again, I came at it from a financial perspective, not as a financier necessarily, but just understanding the way that the projects got made. And one of the things that, and I'm going to get to your question, but because it's relevant, one of the ways that I understood that we could have an impact from going now from hand to mouth to just an entrepreneurial shop to really growing and thinking about scale was unlocking the power of financing. And it was beginning to being done in the feature film world with slate financing and trying to bring it to the made for television movie, because the demand was there. The demand was there because I don't want to skip through that era of cable and direct digital terrestrial channels, the DTTs that were booming around the world, and it was just an explosion of great channels all over the world. And I was seeing, which we can talk about for sure, but I was seeing with extreme admiration the business that Fox was building internationally, and there were some of them were clients of mine, etc. But I understood that really to unlock the power of what we had, really the bottleneck was financing. And it's, not a lot of people know about this except for the few of us who played in this ecosystem. Bank financing for these made for television movies would cost a lot of time, would be like books and binders of closings, and it would cost money and it would slow down the process. And it was money that was not going on screen. So I was able to kind of unlock that through raising some capital, and we can talk about the benefit of who I raised it from, and they were also very patient and extremely kind, and one of my best friends in life, for sure. And it allowed us to kind of unlock and have this velocity now with which we can produce. In comes your question. In comes this brand new world, and we go from the consumer perspective was it had become like very cable brand centric, kind of very rigid, right? You're doing Hallmark movies that everyone knows they still look like basically they're not the same, but they attend to a very precise market and demographic. Similarly, though, on the free to air channels that were populating these movies in Europe and in Latin America and other places of the world, everyone, sci-fi was very distinct. Everything was very distinct and very kind of narrow. What this new world became was opening the aperture. And for me, I had the characteristics of a company that could kind of act and react faster than a lot of my peers, from being able to serve and super serve this new buyer base, number one. Number two, I picked up adages along the way on like business acumen and business practices. One was diversify your content. Don't stick to one. And I had heard, I never even met, I don't even know the company, that had super served the early days of HBO. And when HBO changed their content strategy, off they went because they didn't know where to turn. So I always kind of balanced it out and would try to like make sure that we were in business with others. So we had a bit of a broader spectrum already of people that we were working with, and we weren't just doing one type of movie. We were really actively trying to, within again the ecosystem of kind of lower budgeted films and on content, to play in that. So as the aperture opened, we were able to really come in and do some interesting things. Also as a distributor, right? Because we weren't just producing. As a distributor, by then we had more bulk, we had more size. I had already done the Power Rangers. I mean, it was just a whole different kind of enterprise. And story that few people know is that we were one of the first aggregators for Netflix in Latin America. When they decided to go into international, it was Canada, and then Latin America was kind of their next marketplace. And we worked extremely close with that team and kind of built a lot of their early content through our distribution apparatus that we had there, with a partnership that I had with another good friend of mine in the industry, Ariel Toby, down in Argentina.
And another consequence of the evolution of TV was the consolidation of media organizations, not least of which was Disney's acquisition of 20th Century Fox, but not the Fox network and other Fox broadcast assets. And in 2021, Fox acquired MarVista Entertainment. How did that deal come about? And was it at all daunting to go from being an entrepreneur running his own business, having come from a family-run business, to this corporate entity?
So again, we're kind of skipping what in my life are so many crucial and critical moments, jumping from 2015 to 2021. So much happened. By then, I've now assembled, again, in no small part thanks to the folks that gave me the capital, came from a background in private equity. And I was able to kind of take their playbook. I was not private equity owned. It was private individuals that put up some capital and believed in, also people that believed in me kind of blindly. And I'm proud to say that They did it well. They've done very well in life, but they did well also at the investment in Hollywood, which doesn't always happen for private individuals, as we've seen and we continue to see. But they like the business acumen. But more important than that, it was about me understanding how to build for scale and how to really grow and understanding how they do things. And they were coming from the software business and really thinking through what are the elements that are unique to the entertainment industry, but what are the elements that are just general great business practices that one can have. And as I look to evolve the company and mature the company, and I believe that organizations are organic and you have to keep evolving them, that was just another iteration. And I was able to now really move into my own corporate world within my own company. It still remained, and to this day, it's very familial in that sense. But it became a world with a lot more processes and procedures, and I was able to, and systems, but more importantly, people. And I was able to bring now and attract great talent and assemble an incredible team and just empower them. So we started to really grow and hit some great growth, but it wasn't remotely close to scale. So around right before the pandemic, because then the pandemic suspended everything, I was already answering for what's next, because like, how do I continue to build at this point now? You go again from hand to mouth to now sustaining the life really of over 100 workers. Like, it was real. And I wanted to, at the same time, all well deserved. It was not charity. Obviously, they were working very, very hard, and they all wanted to grow. And I had promised everybody growth, and so I just wanted. It was like a growth company, and that's the way it was set up. And I wanted to continue to grow. So it was either raise capital and keep trying. What do you do? Like, how do you raise further capital to really scale? And in that process is when I just got a cold call from people at Fox who said, you're supplying already Tubi at the time, which we can talk about. And, we're in acquisition mode and looking for some M&A. And are you interested? And I said, I'm not for sale. But at the time, I had already hired an investment banker to look strategically at how to raise money and how to do things and, what that landscape would look like. And I said, but, we can put something together and start the conversations. And that's how it happened. And it was a bilateral conversation. It was not a process. We were not looking to sell. It was, but it fit like a glove in so many areas, in so many ways. And has it been daunting, I think was your question, to move and to see that? Not daunting at all. Yes, change. Yes, different. But I feel blessed. One of the things that happened that fit like a glove is it wasn't just about selling the library. It wasn't just about me. It was selling the way we work. It was bringing my team. Everybody joined Fox. So talk about being able to deliver on the promise of growth. Some of the folks that were with me at the time in 2021 when we sold are currently wonderful Fox executives, and then some. Some are within the purview of what I'm doing. Some of them have gone off and continue to do wonderful things within that organization. Obviously, some other people have left and have gone to other companies as well and continue to grow. So that's one of the proudest things that I have, is having built, help to build and facilitate so many careers. But in the world of Fox, we also came in with a very distinct and important cultural aspect to what we do, and I wanted to proactively integrate into Fox, not to be left alone. Proactively integrate, but at the same time maintain kind of this essence of what made us tick and what made us different. And Fox has given me the freedom to do that, and to continue to, again, now it's even more corporate. So there are different processes and different systems, but regardless of all of that, or with that, some of them have been to a great advantage. Some of them have been different than the way we do things, but there's been always a dialogue and an understanding of, this is really what has made the way that I manage tick and what I see for the future. And that's where we are. It's been an incredible run so far. And 2021 was closing of a chapter for someone who wasn't necessarily looking to exit a company, but I was able to do it successfully. I was able to bring all my folks with me. I was able to, like I said, give return to the investors that had believed in me. So it's just like a happy ending to at least that chapter. We'll see what happens next.
So, as well as the MarVista titles, the broader Fox Entertainment Group distributes a slate of programming from a diverse set of producers, including Bento Box, the animated firm behind Krapopolis, Grimsburg, and Bob's Burgers, which is certainly a massive favorite of my kids. Mars Singer producer, Fox Alternative Entertainment, the Fox Scripted Studio, Studio Ramsey Global, and TMZ. And in March of this year, Fox Entertainment consolidated all of these businesses under your purview as president and head of Fox Entertainment Studios. So, what was the brief, and how do you find a unifying thread in your executive life for this wide-ranging group of producers?
It's a wonderful opportunity, a challenge, but a wonderful opportunity to put together all of these different content lanes and production apparatus within one cohesive studio that I now lead as Fox Entertainment. And it's early days, but it's some of the aspects on the how, which you asked about. It's some of the aspects that we talked about before. And that I think is maybe why I got the job, but certainly how I'm going to do the job, which is in the way we work and how we behave, how information flows, being able to, find centralized synergies within the processes and the systems, and making sure that everybody understands when we're making decisions, trying to drive clarity and commitment and all these things that, frankly, because they were all disparate parts that had been bought mostly through acquisition or grown on the side of the network, all of that, they didn't have this kind of collective unit. And that's what the restructuring has done, is to say very distinct three pillars. One is the network, one is the studio business, and one is the distribution, which is Fox Entertainment Global, which I helped establish, and I did for Fox Entertainment. But now it's, for me, it's time to work very closely with, obviously, my peers and with the distribution arm, because you can't have a studio without being able to monetize your content, but really to build a studio. And this is now my opportunity to do what we talked about. Now we're really talking about scale, because not only are we talking about more content, we're talking about a wider aperture of things, what you just mentioned, which include animation, wonderful animation from Bento Box, and includes unscripted business, especially with things like Gordon Ramsay and The Masked Singer, things that we do over there at TMZ, and the scripted business and the comedy business, and the movies that we're doing as well. So it's a wide range, being able to lead great creative talent with the power of Fox, and with the power of a network business, and with the power of a corporate parent company who's hungry to show again that they can lead this industry as they've done before.
Fox and MarVista also launched a new label, Timeline Entertainment, to focus on diverse content for multiple platforms. And the studio recently announced One Day in October, a scripted anthology series based on real life accounts of the 7th of October terror attacks in Israel. How did that project come about? And how do you navigate the telling of such traumatic and horrifying events so soon after they happened?
I think October 7th is a day that will also live in infamy. It's a date that I think showed us that there's still such barbarism in the world that at least some of us thought wasn't as prevalent as it was on that day, and continues to be. But the project One Day in October, and first I can talk about Tideline, because you asked. Tideline is indeed a new label, which is about emerging talent and looking at different, again, a way for us to experiment and to give opportunities to folks in front and behind the camera that maybe don't have such a ready way to get to tell their stories. So we have some really interesting things that we are doing at Tideline. And this project that crossed my desk through relationships, and that, yes, out of Israel was the producer on, we struck a co-production deal with them in order to be able to tell the story and put it within the Thailand Banner, and it's the first scripted show. It's the first scripted storytelling as to events that happened there, and it's an anthology series, as I think you mentioned, of four different episodes. And but it's not political at all, and it's not about carnage, and it's not about that barbarism necessarily at all. It's about heroism and humanity, and it's about survivor stories, and that's why to me it was very important to get that out to the world. It's very compelling. I mean, from a storytelling perspective, it is very compelling. And I think that being able to do it, there are a lot of documentaries and obviously a lot of journalistic pieces that are coming out of that, and will be commemorating the tragedies of that day and continue to be told as the world navigates this horrible situation. Doing it in narrative form, I think, allows us to kind of, I don't want to say grip the audience, but in essence, it's that, right? It's finding an audience that will hopefully view this and find more empathy and find the humanity in all of us. And the stories are stories of a cross section of society that got hit. It's definitely not about soldiers or things of that nature. There's one story of an Arab and a Jewish woman, an Arab man and a Jewish woman, who survived together in a tree, and then his family, his Arab family, picked them up ultimately after 8 hours. And so anyway, I'm very proud to be able to support this, and I'm very thankful that again I have people around me that are able to support it, and the content is good. I mean, that is the other aspect just that needs to be mentioned. We also got involved because it was like the who's who of Israeli television putting this together, and it's looking wonderful, and creatively it's really a great piece.
So looking back, what would be the biggest lesson from your career that you would pass on to your younger self?
To me, it's about being more courageous. I think I had certain courage, but I didn't have as much courage as I now see that I could have had. And primarily in having tough conversations earlier on. And again, I think for me, at least my persona was conflict avoidance in a sense, and not with clients, obviously. I'm talking more with partners and thinking through and stuff like that, and with employees. And what I've learned through, and I think has made me a much better manager of people and empowerer of people, and creative communities and things that I've been involved with, is that being able to have clear communications, you're really serving people. It's like the adage of clear is kind, and being able to do that. And I think when I was younger, I didn't have that clarity. Maybe I didn't have that belief in myself of knowing what I really wanted or how I saw things. And I now firmly believe in it, that even if, it's a tough conversation, to be able to give honest, productive feedback and have what we call critical conversations. And that's the culture that I think I built as well. Is we like to rumble, we like to just wrestle with conversations, but then always we try to end it in meetings with, okay, what are we committing? And if so, what are we committing? And just driving that clarity and driving then the communication and trying as much as possible so people know what it is, know what their north is, and know what their leaders are doing. So I've learned that over time. I think I could have done a better job of doing that earlier in my career.
And finally, if you were offered the chance to program a Fernando Szew channel on Tubi, which films and series that you've produced or sold would you choose for the launch schedule?
It's like picking kids. You can't. If it's for, as we talked about, a big aperture. So now I can kind of do unlimited hours of content. And God knows I've touched a lot of hours, thankfully. I think the Power Rangers has to be at the baseline, right? Like that's like there's got to be Power Rangers through the channel. That's its own channel, I'm sure, in the world of fast TV. But let's just put it into my channel, and then things that we haven't talked about. But Power Rangers with oh so many hours as we talked about, so that gives us the baseline and the bulk. And then, we did one of the proudest movies for me at the time, and still when people ask, is 16 Wishes, which is a co-production we did with the Disney Channel at the time, and really again shifting the model of what we were doing, but being able to work with a different platform. But it's been throughout. I'm not going to answer your question very clearly. I know, even though I just said I drive clarity, there are so many, and there's so many different genres that I think all of them kind of would belong in this wide aperture of a channel that I'm able to program that includes action and action disaster movies, and of course thrillers, and the feel good romances and the Christmas movies. And now, because again, it wasn't about just what I produced, it's things that I've distributed and things that I kind of have an influence on. And now, you can put cherry on top with Gordon Ramsay and Mass Singer and the animation we talked about. So it would be a very fun exercise to do. I would need a lot more time to answer that question to really optimize what I want. But at the end of the day, to close, and we talked about this, I've always looked at what does the market want? What does the audience want? So it's not really about what I want. Because for me, it may be just all the hours of Messi and Maradona and all the goals, because God knows it's like hundreds and hundreds of goals that they've scored. But it's no, but really it's really understanding how we could serve an audience in need of the type of content that I've been fortunate to have influenced in one way or another. And yeah, that would be it.
Well, Fernando Szew, many thanks for being a guest on the podcast. It's been a fascinating chat. We talked about Studio Ramsay being part of the group and the proposition, and Gordon, I read, was quoted as saying that if you want to become a great chef, you have to work with great chefs, and that's exactly what I did. And I think this podcast has given us the chance to spend time with a great executive, and I think we will all be closer to the recipe for success in the TV business from having spent time with you. So many thanks.
Oh, that's very beautiful closing. I really appreciate that. An honor to speak with you, and also to be amongst the many great guests that you've had. I've had a chance to listen to your podcast, which I will continue to recommend. So thank you for your time, and my pleasure.
Very good.
Thank you.